We don't need your experience. We need your seat. After 24 years of building this company from a regional data management firm into a $200 million tech infrastructure empire, they gave me an hour to pack a cardboard box. They handed me what they called a standard resignation agreement. I handed them a nightmare wrapped in legal paper. 3 days later, the CEO called me at midnight, his voice shaking so badly I could barely understand him. "Elias, what the hell did you do?" That's when he realized I didn't just leave. I took the keys to the kingdom with me. This is the story of how an efficiency expert with a Harvard MBA tried to outsmart a man who knew where every single digital skeleton was buried. In the high-stakes world of American enterprise, they think loyalty is a liability and experience is an expense. They wanted to save $400,000 a year by cutting my salary. Instead, they triggered a series of contractual dominoes that cost them $50 million in valuation, a failed acquisition, and their entire reputation in the industry. I'm Elias Thorne, and I spent 2 decades becoming indispensable. They spent 20 minutes trying to prove I wasn't. They were catastrophically wrong. For nearly a quarter century, I was the ghost in the machine, the invisible architect behind every system that made the company run. I started in 2001 when we were still using paper ledgers and fax machines. Back then, the cloud was something you saw out the window, not something that stored your entire business infrastructure. I built our first database from scratch. I designed the security protocols that protected our clients' financial data. When everyone else went home at 5, I stayed until midnight, writing code, testing systems, debugging the disasters that no one else could solve. I was there during the 2008 financial crash when half the staff got laid off. I took a pay cut and kept the servers running. I was there during the 2020 pandemic lockdowns, building remote access systems in 72 hours that our competitors took 6 months to deploy. To the old board, the founders who remembered when we operated out of a strip mall, I was a legend. They called me the foundation. To the new private equity owners who bought us out in 2024, I was just a line item on a spreadsheet. A very expensive line item they wanted to erase. The acquisition happened on a Tuesday in March. By Thursday morning, there was a stranger sitting in the conference room with a leather portfolio and a smile that never reached his eyes. His name was Marcus Holloway, and his business card read Human Capital Optimization Consultant. He wasn't even born when I started at this company. Marcus spoke in the native tongue of corporate destruction, synergy, right-sizing, leaner leadership structures, generational transition. Every euphemism translated to the same thing. They wanted me gone. He pulled up a PowerPoint presentation that reduced my 24 years to a series of bar graphs showing my salary compared to 3 younger engineers they could hire for the same cost. "We're moving in a younger, more agile direction," Marcus explained, as if age and competence were inversely correlated. The new ownership values fresh perspectives and modern approaches to legacy challenges. I noticed he never once mentioned the systems I'd built, the clients I'd saved, or the fact that half the company's intellectual property existed because I'd created it. Within a week, I watched my server access permissions get quietly throttled. First, the admin privileges disappeared, then the development environments, then finally, just read-only access to systems I'd designed. It was a digital execution in slow motion, and everyone pretended not to notice. They couldn't just fire me outright. My contract was too solid, my documentation too thorough. So they deployed the classic American corporate squeeze play. make the job so miserable that the target quits voluntarily, saving the company from paying out the substantial severance package. My corner office with the city view, the one I'd occupied for 12 years, was suddenly needed for a collaborative workspace initiative. They moved me to a windowless converted storage room near the loading dock that smelled like diesel fumes and defeat. My computer was downgraded from a cutting-edge workstation to a refurbished laptop that took 5 minutes to boot up. The real humiliation came when they assigned me to report to Derek Chun, a junior systems administrator I had personally hired and trained 3 years earlier. Derek couldn't look me in the eye during our first alignment meeting. At 26, he was being used as a weapon, and he knew it. They accidentally lost my performance reviews from the past 5 years. All of them rated exceptional or outstanding. Meeting invitations stopped arriving. My security badge suddenly couldn't access the 3rd floor where the executive offices were. Every day brought a new small degradation designed to communicate a single message. You're not wanted here anymore. Leave quietly, and maybe we'll let you keep some dignity. I never gave them the satisfaction. I showed up every day at 7:30 a.m., sat in that depressing closet, and smiled. I knew the talk was coming the way you know a storm is approaching. You can feel the change in atmospheric pressure. So instead of getting angry, I got clinical. I became an archaeologist of my own career, excavating every contract, every amendment, every email trail that documented my 24-year journey from junior systems analyst to chief technology architect. My original 2001 employment contract was a beautiful relic from a different era. Back when founders actually valued loyalty and wrote protections into agreements. But the real treasure was the 2014 intellectual property transfer agreement, signed during our major expansion when I'd transitioned dozens of my personally developed tools and protocols to company ownership. That's where I found it. Section 9.2, Paragraph 4. The nuclear clause. It stated that if I were terminated without documented cause, or if I resigned under conditions of constructive dismissal or material breach of original employment terms, the exclusive licenses for the core security protocols I'd authored would immediately revert to my personal LLC, Thorne Digital Solutions, which I'd maintained since 2010 for consulting side projects. Those protocols weren't decorative. They were the foundation of our entire cloud infrastructure, the encryption backbone that protected $2 billion in client data. Without them, the company's systems would function like a car without an engine. All the parts would be there, but nothing would move. I spent 3 nights drafting a resignation letter that read like a surrender, but functioned like a landmine with a time-delayed fuse. Every word was carefully calibrated, every clause cross-referenced with my original contracts. It looked simple. It was devastating. Friday afternoon, 4 p.m. exactly. The time was calculated, late enough that I couldn't consult an attorney, early enough that they could process the paperwork and have me out before the weekend. Marcus Holloway and a grim-faced HR director named Patricia entered the converted storage room that had become my office. They didn't waste time with pleasantries. Patricia slid a 5-page document across the folding table they'd brought. "Standard separation agreement," she said in the tone of someone who'd done this 100 times. 6 months of base salary, continued health insurance through the year, and a mutual non-disparagement clause. Sign today, and we'll process your final payment by Monday. Or we can document performance issues and terminate for cause, which means you get nothing. The document was a masterpiece of corporate predation. Buried in the dense paragraphs were clauses that would strip me of my unvested RSUs, worth $840,000, and require me to acknowledge that all intellectual property I'd ever created was exclusively company property with no residual rights or claims. I didn't argue. I didn't even read their document thoroughly. Instead, I slid my own one-page memo across the table. I'm resigning effective immediately per the terms and conditions outlined in Section 9. Two of my 2014 intellectual property transfer addendum, as consistent with my original 2001 employment agreement. Marcus actually smirked. He saw the word resigning and heard surrender. Patricia glanced at it, saw my signature already in place, and signed the company's acknowledgement without reading the reference clauses. They countersigned it, shook my hand with transparent relief, and had security escort me out within 20 minutes. As I walked out with my cardboard box, Marcus called after me. "Thanks for making this easy, Elias. Clean transitions are better for everyone." I just smiled and kept walking. Monday morning, 6:47 a.m. The company's entire cloud architecture transitioned into read-only emergency mode. Customer transactions froze mid-process. Financial data became inaccessible. The proprietary client portal that processed $50 million in monthly transactions displayed a simple message: security certificate expired. System locked pending license renewal. The panicked IT team, none of whom had been with the company more than 3 years, tried every override protocol in the manual. Nothing worked. They attempted to generate new security certificates, but the system rejected them. The architecture I designed had a failsafe that required cryptographic keys to match the license holder's credentials. That's when Derek Chun, my former protege turned unwilling supervisor, pulled up the license documentation. The blood drained from his face. The core security protocols, the ones that controlled access to everything, weren't owned by the company. They were licensed to the company by Thorne Digital Solutions, LLC, with renewal contingent on continued active employment and good faith adherence to original contractual terms. By accepting my conditional resignation and countersigning the document that referenced Section 9.2, they had legally acknowledged the activation of my IP reclamation clause. The license had automatically terminated the moment they signed. The 72-hour grace period expired over the weekend while they were celebrating their cost savings. The company was locked out of its own infrastructure. By me. Legally. Irrevocably. At 9:15 a.m., the CEO received a notification that their largest client was threatening to terminate a $30 million annual contract due to service disruption. By 11 a.m., 3 more clients had filed formal complaints. By 2 p.m., the board had convened an emergency meeting. By 5 p.m., they'd contacted their attorneys, who delivered the worst possible news. Everything Elias Thorne did was completely legal, thoroughly documented, and absolutely enforceable. My phone rang at 2:17 a.m. I was sitting on my porch, sipping a bourbon I'd been saving for a special occasion, watching the stars and feeling more at peace than I had in years. The caller ID showed the CEO's personal cell phone. Elias. His voice was barely recognizable. The executive confidence completely stripped away, replaced by something between terror and desperation. "What the hell did you do? The entire system is locked. We have clients threatening to sue. The board is talking about criminal charges. You have to fix this." I took a slow sip of bourbon and let the silence stretch. I resigned as requested. Clean transition, remember? That's what Marcus said was better for everyone. You sabotaged us. You built a time bomb into the system. I built a protection clause into my contract, I corrected calmly. Back in 2014, when I transferred my intellectual property to the company, I included standard reclamation provisions. Your lawyers reviewed and approved it. Your predecessor CEO signed it. You inherited it. And your human capital consultant triggered it without reading the documentation. More silence. Then, quietly, what do you want? I'd had 3 days to consider this. I want acknowledgement. A formal statement from the board that my termination was premature and my contributions were undervalued. I want Marcus Holloway's immediate termination. He's a liability to any company that employs him. And I want a consulting agreement for $0.2 million paid immediately to license back the security protocols I created, plus $50,000 monthly retainer for the next 12 months to ensure smooth operations. That's extortion. No, I said quietly. That's consequences. You tried to erase 24 years of institutional knowledge to save $400,000 annually. Instead, you've lost $50 million in valuation, damaged client relationships that took decades to build, and proven to your entire industry that your due diligence process is catastrophically incompetent. I'm offering you a solution. The alternative is watching your company collapse while you're tied up in litigation you'll lose. The line went quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, I need to talk to the board. You have until 9 a.m., I said. After that, I'm licensing my protocols to your 3 largest competitors. I'm sure they'd love to offer your clients a stable alternative. The agreement was signed by 7:30 a.m. The $4.2 million hit my account. By 10 a.m. Marcus Holloway was terminated by noon. The board issued a statement praising my decades of invaluable service and continued partnership. I unlocked the systems by 2 p.m. 2 weeks later, the private equity acquisition fell apart entirely. Their due diligence had been so incompetent that 3 other optimizations, like mine, were discovered lurking in contracts they'd never properly reviewed. The company's valuation dropped 40% overnight. I got a handwritten letter from the original founder, one of the old guard who'd been sidelined during the acquisition. It said simply, "You taught them what we always knew. You can buy a company, but you can't buy the irreplaceable people who built it. At least, not for cheap." I framed that letter and hung it in my new home office, where I now run Thorne Digital Solutions full-time, consulting for companies who've learned that experience isn't an expense, it's an investment. And loyalty, real loyalty, is a two-way street. Some lessons cost $50 million to learn, but they're never forgotten.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Beyond the Scripted.